Доброго дня, шановні
Hello, dear colleagues. We are very glad to greet you, the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. My name is Nadia Afanasieva. Today we are talking about smart specialty. How do we launch the competitive economy in the regions on our way to the EU? As for smart specialty, we had quite a big event, the annual forum that we are holding since 2019 in Kyiv, and that was November 2021. After that, the full-scale invasion has started and many processes, of course, changed. But we do understand that smart specialization, it might be one of the tools how to improve the development of the economy, to create new jobs and support innovations in the regions of Ukraine. Therefore, it's very important for us nowadays to support regions in implementation of smart specialization processes, in creating strategy, and in creating the chains of added value for businesses that might become the support for economy for the recovery of Ukraine. Today we are talking about smart specialization. The first speaker I would like to give the floor to is Mr. Andriy Telupa, who is head of the Coordination Center for the Implementation of Smart Specialization, Deputy Minister of Economy of Ukraine. Mr. Andriy, the floor is yours. Hello. Greetings to everyone here at this event. First of all, I would like to thank Ukrainian Institute for International Policy for holding this event, and you're working all the time, you're implementing smart specialization in Ukraine, because if we are talking about the approach itself, then smart specialization, it was created as a matter of fact as a tool for developing regions and also connections between the regions, countries, and the EU. But nowadays we can see that this is the tool that we can implement and spread wider in Ukraine. It will help to develop Ukrainian regions, and it's very important for us. And we think that smart specialization will give us will give the regions the opportunity to find their strengths and develop those. So when we have the team game, then we have to put a stake at the strongest players, and personal development works best when the person is developing their strengths. So we want to see our regions develop their strengths, and that will allow to engage more investments and to develop the enterprises better, and of course have the best jobs and income to state and local budget. That is very important for us, and the Ministry of Economy is the leading ministry in the government, which is working on coordination, implementation of smart specialization, and it is very important in order for us to strategically move one step after the other one in terms of its implementation. I would like to say that our steps were highly appreciated by the European Commission in the last report, and the important step was finalizing adaptation of the methodology of development of smart specialization based on the EU rules, because these methodological recommendations on using smart specialty on the region level is the practical step that will allow us to move with each region separately so that each of them has their own smart specialization. Secondly, we created a national team with the participation of the Ministry of Development and Ministry of Education and other stakeholders. And the results of this national team is monitoring and support of implementation of smart specialization strategies in regions. And the nearest task will be supporting the regions in development, and then we are planning to adopt these regional strategies in the framework of state strategy for regional development. So each region should have its developed smart specialization that will be added to the responsive strategy of the development, and it has to be adopted by the national team. Therefore, for the team of Ministry of Economy, this tool of smart specialization is a huge umbrella that gives the opportunity to identify and determine these unique fields in the regions, and thus work together with international and internal investors in order to involve some additional financial resources to develop these strengths. Because we all understand that the strategy which is written there on paper, it costs at least something if it is already implemented. So after the development and after the approval, we see the very important step, it's practical implementation, then switching to real steps and real projects where we, thanks to additional financial resources, will be able to implement, of course, because if we look at Ukraine facility and other financial tools, especially on Ukraine facility, if we are looking at the second component where we are talking about grants for business development and support. So this is what can be involved for smart specialization strategy. And in general, we are working now with our donors on ensuring both public and private investments. And there is high request in terms of obtaining and having the priority fields and the strengths of the region. So with these strategies, they have to cover nowadays some weaknesses and lack of information on the regional level, and thus make it possible to get more financing for the regional level. Therefore, if we sum up, we can see the clear implementation of the tool of regional strategies of smart specialization as a gradual. So we've adopted the methodology. Soon we will adopt the regional strategies, and then we are moving to practical implementation to these strategies and certain projects, and together with international partners we are engaging additional resources for the region so that they can see the clear advantages of smart specialization. And here we will be able to talk about the expansion of program support on the regional level. Even if we are talking about public investments, then in the framework of the reform of management of public investments, we also need to prioritize the projects, because now we have more than 700 projects in our unified pipeline of projects, and therefore we need to prioritize them even in terms of regional priorities. Therefore, we think that it should be a practical tool that will allow regions to involve more money, and local businesses, in our opinion, they should also participate actively in all of that and hopefully reveal some new financial horizons for themselves. And implementation of best European practices allows us to integrate later on into European financial mechanisms and thus be the unified market and unified Europe, not only on paper and an integration of our legislation, but in real and industrial supply chains. In my opinion, that is the best option of Euro integration, when it is done not on paper but in real life, in real project, and we have this combination of European and Ukrainian businesses, and therefore we become part of it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Andriy. I would like to add that the strategy of smart specialization is flexible and constant process, and European countries has proven that to us, those who are implementing their strategies since 2014. Some of them, the process is flexible, it is constantly under monitoring, it's changing all the time. If one strategy is not working for many years, so every year you have to reassess that. And it is important to understand who are these people who will be on the level of the region implementing and monitoring these strategies. In addition to all of that, very important element of smart specialization strategy, very important role belongs to scientists and those who are working with patented researchers. I would like to give the floor to the next speaker, Mr. Hryhorij Mozulevich, Director General of the Directorate for the Development and Science of the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine. Mr. Hryhorij. Thank you very much, Ms. Nadia. Thank you very much for raising such an important topic. And in order to continue the things mentioned by our colleague from the Ministry of Economy, I would like to mention that our ministry recently, on the 14th of March in Brussels, they had a meeting with the European Commission on conducting the official screening of whether Ukrainian legislation is in line with EU legislation. And the separate issue was smart specialization in the framework of this screening. But I will talk about broader framework. Of course, we presented the condition of adaptation of Ukrainian legislation in general in the field of science and innovations, both in the context of regional development and in the context of the whole country. We expect some positive feedback from our partners regarding our further moves. Of course, we have some problematic aspects during the full-scale war, big war, the war for the future and the European Union dreaming of financing the field of innovations in Ukraine that will grow at least to the usual norms of the EU countries within 1-2% of GDP. Unfortunately for our scientists, it remains a dream. Therefore, we are saying that the state nowadays is financing this sphere all over the country in general, approximately 17% from GDP. So this is a catastrophic thing from the point of view of the future. So we are making everything possible in order for our scientists to integrate as soon as possible to the world and European primarily space, and so that they can use and apply the financial mechanisms that are already existing in the EU countries. So we are working since 2021, from the first year of the new program Horizon Europe, the biggest program of the European Union in the field of science and innovations, and already now Ukrainian organization perform more than 200 projects in the framework of this program, only in the framework of the broad competition. So they are present almost in all the regions of Ukraine, and they have quite powerful support. They have access to research infrastructure, but every time we are talking about very important focus, our people have to work in Ukraine. We have to defend our future, and our scientists have to have the possibility to work in Ukraine, in all Ukrainian cities, both in Kyiv, in a big scientific center, also in Kharkiv in difficult conditions, Dnipro, Zaporizhia, Odessa, Mykolaiv, and even Kherson. Therefore, in the framework of all of that, we presented the broad framework of reforms that are conducted nowadays by the ministry in the field of science and innovations, and I would like to mention our initiative, the draft law with the code name Science City, which has to bring the field of science to the proper level in order to make it possible to compete for state and private scientific institutions. They should be at the normal level of taxation in Ukraine, to how maybe we even can call that tax benefits, but I think we should use some other words. We are talking about the big reform in the field of reconstruction, adaptation of the network of scientific institutions and higher educational institutions in the framework of state attestation of the higher educational institutions that has started last year and will be conducted during this year. We are talking about the financial support of the best scientific institutions that I am confident will be in all the regions of Ukraine. We are talking now about the science, we are talking about implementation of the National Plan on Open Science, and about many, many other directions. I would like to mention that in 2021, before the full-scale war, we had the update of our roadmap and integration to European investigation space, and there's priority 5A transfer of knowledge and open innovations. And a certain goal is implementation on the national level, the mechanisms and tools for the policy of open innovations and disseminating the results of scientific research for competitive economy and sustainable development. That contained the task number 8 to promote participation of scientific institutions and subjects of innovative activity in the process of development and implementation of the approach of smart specialization on the regional level. The ministry was involved to performing strategic documents that at present are being done under the Ministry of Economy. And we can mention the state strategy for regional development for 2021-2027 and corresponding initiatives of our ministry. I would also like to mention that we are trying to get leadership experience in the initiatives and regional programs, some cross-regional programs, among different countries, regional programs initiated by the EU. So this year, 2025, our country receives the right of being the head of the joint agenda of the Black Sea. So it's a huge support in terms of economic cooperation in the framework of Black Sea region. We already have quite interesting projects there. We have this year many ideas to continue this program, to use some joint researches for the future Black Sea region, and unfortunately to solve the issues that we have as a result of war, in particular regarding the pollution of the Black Sea and consequences of explosion of Kakhovka Dam, etc., etc. We can also mention, with your leadership at the time, the strategy for development of Donetsk region. It happened not that long ago, and the country also had positive experience of participation in the program. To be brief, that's it from my side, and I'm ready to join Q&A. Thank you very much, Gregory. Thank you very much for the overview of what is happening in science, actually, and indeed, financing of science is one of the very important issues, and we are raising these issues now, especially when we are discussing the new financial framework of the EU. What is called the use for the science. We have lots of businesses in Ukraine who switch to this format of innovation development, and scientists also need enough resources in this field as well. And next, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Manuel Palazuelos Martinez, head of the Smart Specialization and Innovation Ecosystem Group in the EU Enlargement and Neighborhood region. Mr. Manuel, you are working a lot with the countries that are not members of the EU on development of smart specialization strategies. Your opinion regarding this, and what should we expect in Ukraine? Please, the floor is yours.
Very much, Adia. Thank you, everyone. Very good morning. I have a set of slides. I think you are showing them. Yes, I can see them there. I'm delighted to be with you today. I'm part of the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and I will tell you a little bit about what has been the experience and the lessons that we have learned in other enlargement and neighborhood countries that may be useful for Ukraine. I will talk a little bit also about the Ukrainian experience, and then some proposals on the table in case they can help you. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide, please. The process of smart specialization that Ukraine has to undergo now has two main phases. First of all, we have to design the actual strategy, and then to implement it. And they have different steps in that regard. Let me focus only on the design phase, which is the one that Ukraine is into. The two initial steps have to do with the institutional capacity building. First of all, the decision that Ukraine took to start the process, and then an analysis of all the strategic mandates that make it possible. Then now it is important to do the diagnosis, and both in terms of the qualitative mapping and the quantitative mapping, to understand what do we have as economic tissue, what do we have as economic resources, as skills, as also soft, let's say, skills within the country, to be able to understand the full picture and engage into a stakeholder dialogue with all the main stakeholders in Ukraine, with the major ones, so the private sector, the different parts of the public sector, which often is as important as engaging with other parts of the society. We have seen in other countries that engaging and having a dialogue between the different parts of the government within the process of smart specialization brings particular benefits, and it is necessary for a successful implementation of design and implementation of the process. Then, when we have this common vision that we have created with our stakeholders, research institutions, private sector, government, etc., we have to build the institutional capacity to be able to implement that, and finally, we end up in a sort of final strategy that is the one that is submitted to the Commission and that is assessed by the Commission, as other countries have done. Let me not talk so much about the implementation, because, okay, Ukraine now is in the design phase, so I would like to put the particular emphasis on this. Next slide, please. This process, as you know, as it has been mentioned, is particularly relevant in the context of enlargement. And you've seen that in chapter 25 on science and research, which is the one that has been very recently initiated, and well, it was referred to the talks that the Commission and the Ukraine government had a few weeks ago in Brussels. And there, smart specialization plays an important role, in the sense that this chapter relates to the existence of the necessary conditions for effective participation in the EU's framework programs. And there is where smart specialization can facilitate this participation by creating this institutional capacity and this strategic view. So I think it's particularly important in this context. Next slide, please. If I focus a little bit on the process of smart specialization in Ukraine, the process started in about 2016-17, and it was under a project that was called at the time Smart Specialization and Organizational Development in Enlargement and Horizon 2020 associated countries, under which certain Ukrainian regions were supported in developing their smart specialization strategies on a fully voluntary basis. And the JRC, in that sense, provided methodological and expert support for the development of these strategies. And there was a fair amount of progress made at the start of this process through the mapping of economic innovation, etc. And international experts were engaged to support these exercises in a number of regions with, I would say, a good level of progress. And 7 regions were in a good stage of development, with important stakeholder involvement already taking place. Obviously, this process was halted in February 2022 due to the Russian aggression, and the process obviously stopped naturally. But now we have an opportunity, as part of the reconstruction of Ukraine, to restart this process and make it even more important, in the sense of considering smart specialization a sort of key driver for the reconstruction and the territorial development of Ukrainian regions. This is particularly relevant because, okay, we want to have reconstruction, but a new beginning might mean not only reconstruction, might mean not only construct what was there, but also maybe a new model of development more focused on higher value added activities, etc. And smart specialization brings, let's say, the tool to be able to make this reconstruction more focused on innovation and activities of higher value added. This is recognized very clearly by the Ukrainian government, and already in the Lugano conference in last June, smart specialization was mentioned in the working document with plans to have smart strategies, smart specialization strategies in all 25 regions with a selection of economic priorities for development. Next slide, please. Let me show you in terms, when you will have to choose and narrow down the activities that you want, that you see that there is enough skills, enough research, enough potential to develop and support further. You may find useful an analysis that we did back a couple of years ago in 2022. We released a publication on the potential for knowledge-based economic cooperation and smart specialization in Eastern Partnership countries, and of course it included Ukraine. And there, if you see this table shows concordance between, let's say, economic and innovation and science and technology specialization domains. So they can be used as a basis to inform the process, so to inform the smart specialization process. And there you can see that, for example, there it takes into account the variables that you see on the columns. So the critical mass, the actual specialization in terms of publication, patents, etc., and the level of excellence in those fields. And you can see that fields such as energy, such as health and well-being, and others ranging from biotechnology to governance, culture, education, and the economy, mechanical engineering and heavy machinery, nanotechnology and materials, transport, etc., had a fair amount of these elements going on. So this can inform the whole process in Ukraine in terms of which particular areas can be supported further and where those skills and that critical mass may exist. You can see on the right-hand side also in terms of economic clusters and the concordance between both that I was saying, between economic and innovation and science and technology specialization domains. And you can see how this is particularly obvious in food processing and manufacturing, in wood products, in metalworking technology, information technology, and analytical instruments, where I know that in particular in the past Ukraine has had tremendous, impressive advances. Also production technology and heavy machinery, automotive, etc. So this is just to, let's say, inform the process that you have to undergo. Let me also refer very briefly, next slide please, to a publication that we published last year, which was a smart specialization in the Western Balkans and Turkey. So it sums up the experience that we have had in other enlargement and neighborhood countries. And it takes into account, or it draws recommendations in terms of the implementation of the SD process, the existing methodology and tools, and supporting the actual process. So next slide. I will go straight into just three, let's say, main lessons that we've learned and that may be useful for Ukraine in designing this process. First of all, we have observed that the S3 processes have been pretty lengthy because of particularly breaks and pauses in certain countries. In order to avoid the periods of pause, it is important to ensure two things. First of all, that adequate resources are indeed developed, are indeed allocated to this process. And second, and there is also the support of the European Commission. I'm sure that my colleague Yanis will refer to some instruments later on. And it is also important, very, very important, a tangible, a non-material element, but it's absolutely essential is the government commitment. The government commitment has proved to be a key enabling factor for a good smart specialization strategy. Whenever there has been government commitment throughout the process has been much better, much shorter, etc. Second, and I'm happy to say that in this regard, so far the Ukrainian government seems to be very committed in this regard, which is excellent news. Second, appropriate governance is a key success factor. So it is very important to not only keep the political commitment, but also try to work with the stakeholders to manage their expectations and to have them on board throughout the process. Okay. The third main lesson that we have learned from enlargement and neighborhood countries is that the main benefits of the process may come from, first of all, the governance aspect that I've mentioned before, and second, from the phase of stakeholder dialogue. So it is important to feed this process, to feed it through the whole process. Now we're talking about the design phase, but to maintain that even in the implementation phase with trainings, with capacity building, with sharing of data, etc. Next slide, please. Okay, I will refer very briefly to some suggestions that I put on the table that may hopefully help you in terms of the next steps that you have to undergo. In the stage that Ukraine is in, it is important to complete the regional S3 teams. That I know that there's a high level of engagement, but it's part of this process that you will have to undergo. And we would propose to, and we have had talks with Nadia in this regard, to select a few pilot regions that may act as that you choose, obviously. That may act as these pilot regions where the whole process can be tested and advanced, and they can showcase how this process happens to the rest of the regions, so that the rest of the regions can have a more smoother process and also a faster process. You will, at the stage that you are in, you will have to complete the quantitative analysis to detect all these elements that I was talking about before. And we will be able to also try to support this process with specialized training to the selected S3 teams as you see fit, as you see available, as you see necessary. Also, it will be important to start the entrepreneurial discovery process, so what we call the EDP, with some expert support that we would be able to provide from our side, and to try to do some awareness raising and communication activities such as this one. This is a perfect example of it, so that the process, people involved and those that are not directly related to smart specialization in their day-to-day see the benefits that it can bring and can participate in the process. And then if we do this process, we will be able to, with the pilot regions first, to have spillover effects of this process to other regions. Next slide, please. Now, very briefly, to finish my presentation, I would say that you have, in this, let's say, spirit of trying to support the process, not only financially from the Commission, but from our side in the GRC, also methodologically, etc., we'll be able to, and providing experts, etc., we are able to provide experts, but also to showcase many of the elements that we already have and that we tend to amalgamate in what we call the Smart Specialization Knowledge Hub. So that is fully available online, where we have all of our publications, and we have, for example, what we call a MOOC, a massive online course on smart specialization, that it can be shared with stakeholders, where it explains in full detail all the steps that need to be followed and how we propose to do so with the methodology of the European Commission. Next slide. So just to finish, one last slide to say that we have other external communication elements that you may be able to use. First of all, we are active on social media under the hashtag S3BeyondEU, where you can follow, let's say, the activities that JRC is doing a bit more closely. And we have a newsletter and a website in the EU Science Hub, where we have regular publications that pertain, in particular, smart specialization. I think I shall leave it here, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to engage with you in a dialogue to be able to discuss these issues in further detail. Thank you very much.
Дуже дякую, Мануелю, за
Thank you very much for Manuel for such detailed description. I think that from the name of Coordination Center, our Coordination Center, I will add one detail which is very important to hear for Ukrainian regions. We don't want to exclude any region from the map of smart specialty, but we understand that there is some concentration, and the main condition for smart specialization development, that is the concentration of science and research on certain territories. So we encourage the regions that are ready for that, those that are not in the front line as of now, those that are more safe, and those that have potential for development of business and science. We encourage them to engage in the process, and of course, as it was mentioned by Manuel already, we are going to help with experts and in organizational sense in supporting their smart specialization. Manuel has touched upon the topic of the process of negotiations already, and smart specialization is included to the chapters on negotiations. It's very important to support the process because this is happening quite fast. And yesterday in Kyiv at the event, we were talking about the deadline till 2030 that Ukraine will become the EU member, and it was mentioned on quite a high level. So it's a big challenge for us to cope with this deadline and to make everything possible from our side in order to support that. Mr. Yanis Izelniks, head of the Socio-Economic Policy Group, Ukraine Service, DG INEST. Maybe for some it will be the news. I will explain that DG NEAR is divided. Now we have the two DG that are responsible for policy of a neighborhood. DG INEST is working on our territory. So, Mr. Yanis, please, the floor is yours. Regarding the negotiation chapters, what should we expect?
Thank you, Nadia. It's huge pleasure to meet you again and also meet other colleagues whom we recently met in Zurich when we were discussing science, recovery, reconstruction of science sector. Also good to see Ministry of Education, Ministry of Economy. I mean, it's very, very pertinent to have this conversation together. I'm actually here together with my colleague Oyvind Opland, who is our expert and policy officer for social policies, and also following smart specialization as part of the chapter 25 of science and research. Yes, and thank you for the introduction. I think we need to present ourselves because we have a new emblem, new name. We are DG INEST right now, so DG NEAR is staying in history, but we continue working on Ukraine. So nothing on our team has changed. So we are of course very committed, and the team is the same, and we will go ahead. On the smart specialization, of course, what is it? Many people would say from their own perspective. For some, it's going to be enlargement. Part of the legal framework. For some, it's going to be a tool for economic development, for economic support. For some, it's going to be part of science and research, and for some, of course, regional policy. It's all true, and we need to have certainly this conversation together. And I'm particularly happy that we see Ministry of Economy on board, and there is a leadership from the Ministry of Economy side. Because maybe I'm an economist, and I believe that we need to look at the economic development and of regions from the perspective of economic policies. Of course, I come from a small country, Latvia, which is a size of one of the Ukrainian regions, and we have one strategy, one national development plan, and we only had to do it once. You will have to do it 24 times. I know it's going to be 24 times more difficult, but I think it's going to be also 24 times more rewarding and constructive, because what you will get out of it is going to be a SWOT analysis of your strengths of your regions, and you will have a huge help in prioritizing how to support economic development in your regions. And let's not underestimate the value of participatory approach in this process, which is gonna build a consensus on how we should go about developing and supporting our regions. We, of course, as you know, European Commission does not do anything or likes to do support when there is a plan underneath it. And we, of course, you know very well Ukraine plan, as you are engaged in implementation of Ukraine plan. And as it was mentioned already on several occasions, smart specialization is a means of justifying development policy and next steps in how should we be spending the funding for development and for our programs. So this is something that we need to be mindful of when thinking and developing these smart specialization strategies. So as it was mentioned, we have implications of this concept at least for 2 chapters, and I'm working in a team that's now driving and working on the enlargement process. This is our top priority at the moment. We have screened more than half of the Ukrainian legislation by now, and we have a bit less than a half to go until October. As it was mentioned, Chapter 25, Science and Research, was screened on 14th of March. It was exactly the day when we were debating in Zurich the support to science sector. And the other chapter, Chapter 22 on regional policy, will actually close the entire screening, and it's going to come on the 14th of October, when we will finalize the screening of Ukrainian legislation. And of course, we expect that Ukraine also signals to us how the regional policy is going to be taken forward. And in that, we certainly see the role and a place of smart specialization. You very well know that we measure the process and progress of enlargement by means of annual enlargement report, which is published every year in October. And in the past reports, we have referred to smart specialization. I think 2 years ago, we were having maybe excessive expectations that some of the plans of smart specialization could be already ready and published. We have slightly scaled back. We are now telling and asking Ukraine to work towards enabling the road for smart specialization. So doing everything that regions would have a legal base and would be equipped to embark on this process and come up with their set of priorities. Here I also wanted to refer to a concept that is very popular and owned by our economic DG Grow, which is in charge of European industrial policy and SME policy. And this is basically the notion of concept of clusters of companies. The existence of the clusters of companies in certain regions, and this is scientifically proven, is increasing competitiveness of that region. And this is the whole point, that we need to build on our strengths, on competitiveness, where there are already conditions that can be developed further in the spirit of smart specialization taken forward. And helping these value chains, we will certainly achieve much higher and quicker value in our economic development. Last point that I wanted to mention is to refer to future financial instruments. We all know that smart specialization has been now used significantly in planning for the current EU funds, EU structural funds. EU member states are justifying to European Commission how they will spend the EU structural funds with evidence from the Smart Specialization. What the future will hold, we don't know. At the moment, the discussion on the future financial instruments has just started in the European Union and the future budget. I know that there's a preference of going towards direction, and that's one of the camps that is advocating that we need to go towards something like we are doing in Ukraine with the Ukraine plan. So we are asking member states to deliver reforms, and upon delivery of reforms, we disperse budget support funding. This is one of the options that's going to go. But even if that is the case, there needs to be a calculation behind proposed reforms, especially on a regional level, on how we are going to proceed with achieving results, monitoring these results, and being accountable for spending the EU funds. So I really am very glad that we are having this conversation today. I think Ukraine is making right steps. This is a clear evidence that you are thinking about taking forward the Smart Specialization. That gives us as a good basis of maybe taking the next step in the next enlargement report, and we are looking forward to your steps and helping you on each step of this as you advance towards implementing Smart Specialization. Thank you very much, and I'll be following very carefully and with interest your debate today.
Дякую, Яніс. Я від себе
Thank you very much, Yanis. I would like to add about the financial framework. It's very important for us so that the priorities regarding economic development and smart specialization would be included to the new financial period, not only for structural funds, but also for the funds that are working in Ukraine, for example, the various programs of transporter cooperation, because it's very important to support this activity so that these movements understand that they have financial support, but we need to understand our priorities in smart specialization. So as at the beginning, Mr. Andriy mentioned, also at the beginning, we have to identify the priorities. We need to understand what do we do, and then we will be able to think about the database and about the financial database for regions. Next, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Rostislav Tomanchuk, Senior Expert, Ukrainian Institute of International Policy. At the beginning of Smart Specialization, he was here with us because we were talking at the beginning that Smart Specialization started long ago. So what's next? Where do we have to pay attention? Thank you very much, Ms. Nadia. And when talking in the government, I was recalling how Smart Specialization is working. When we open a dozen of new programs of the European Union, like Digital Europtex, Connecting Euro Facility, EU for Health, and a range of other big programs that allow Ukraine to understand better how they can win the projects and how these projects can be implemented, because it is important for us, was important and is important, so that the possibilities that are there for us, they are in line with the possibilities that we have, so that we can get the good added value. I would like to mention a few moments. First of all, I'm very happy that we are communicating actually with the ministry. We are communicating with the ex-DG NEAR and DG GRC. I cannot recall straight away the new name, I'm sorry, of the former DG NEAR, but it is a very good sign for me, because I can see that there is a constant working dialogue. It's not like the dialogue when we meet once per year, like hear what we've done and then see you in a year. And that's extremely important, that this communication, it is all the time on the working level. And I think that this communication will allow us not to lose these details, and it will allow us to synchronize various opportunities with various tools. The second message I would like to mention, Now we have a big window of opportunities. When we've started in 2016, everybody said that it's a long story. Well, we don't know when it will give the results. It takes long time. We have no money and it's all complicated. Let us just figure out some economic priorities that we want and we will promote those. Why actually I am saying that today we have the window of opportunities, because we in the given situation have certain resources and we are in the conditions when we need, like as it was mentioned by colleague Andrei and the colleague from Euro Commission, the things that are provided by the EU via the second pillar, via the conference of donors that is conducted annually, via various investment offers that we are preparing for different countries. It's better for us to correct our approach so that our regions can understand what they should offer, what is the added value of their proposals, what kind of processes they want to promote, where they should take loans, how they are going to return the loans, how do they develop clusters, how do they develop the chains of added value, how do they develop certain spheres that will be unique for each region separately. And actually, Smart Specialization gives these answers. Therefore, I would like to come to the third message. We need to understand also it's a very unique story regarding Smart Specialization when on the national level everything necessary for regions was done. And actually, as of today, the ball is on the field of the regions. So the national team was created, the methodology was developed, there are resources in Ukraine facility, there are different resources from different programs to support the economy. And now actually the question is in the field of regions. And it depends on the regions whether they can efficiently use everything that is there in their field within the framework that was prepared for them. How can they approach that? And actually here we are talking about the regions. So from our side, of course, we are ready to help, we are ready to consult, we are ready to support, and the ministry, the national team will also have their... They are prepared to approve the strategies so that it's not just something from the space that somebody wrote something, but for us to stick to certain logics of events. And of course, coming back to the first message, it's very important to have this constant dialogue with the colleagues from the EU Commission and actually the possibility of analytical organizations of Western Baltic countries or the EU, so that we are not in a separate bulb, but for us to understand how do we improve, how do we build these chains of added value with the same regions that are there in the EU or with the countries, as it was mentioned by the colleague from Latvia. So I have a brief presentation and I will try to briefly go through the things that we've got already. So these few messages, they will be more interesting, I guess, we won't stop on each of the slides. Just for the colleagues who are watching us online, that will be interesting. They will be able to watch the fields that were identified in the region. So what is the logics and where are we? So when the process has started in 2016, for a few years, all this preparatory work has lasted that enabled us to involve the best expertise from the EU in order to collect all the statistic data based on different possibilities from Eurostat, from our statistics, from the numbers that were there on the level of regions, and on purpose regarding the methodology of Smart Specialization to go to different fields that were identified in each region separately. These are not the topics that somebody just figured out or invented, but those are the fields that confirm the real business, real science, real innovations in regions. Each of these fields has a list of companies. These are the real companies with their code, with their stuff, with their successes and losses. So each of these fields has a certain team of participants. The team of participants that are doing their business, that are making their input to innovations, that are developing. And they are making this map of potentially strong business and innovations in each of the regions. The uniqueness of smart specialization is that actually, primarily, everything is really well supported by numbers, and in addition to all of that, it gives the possibility for each region to look for new opportunities. We cannot say that this is the exhaustive list, because some businesses left, some were relocated, some went to the other region, and then they changed the region once again. So we understand that the process has certain variables, but this is the basis in order to understand how to move forward. Why am I saying that? Because the specifics of smart specialization that is implemented by the regions in the process of writing the smart specialization strategy will include constant work of these groups in each field separately. We are not saying that all the fields should work. No, each of these fields is working in their direction, but it's a platform for them. If the environment included to a certain field is within the understanding how they want to develop, then the process is moving. So smart specialization process in regions means that they will have the work groups and they will monitor what is happening nowadays, what is the plan of actions, what kind of loans they need, what laboratories do they need, technical parks, vouchers, what do they need in terms of infrastructure, what kind of support might be there from local authorities, where do they engage investors, where do they need education to prepare their staff, where do they cooperate on the national level, what do they do with the patent. So these are live organisms, each of these fields. What is actually the basis of this resilience of smart specialization? And then from our side, from the national level, we are giving all the possible tools in order to these work groups to be live, have ideas, and be willing to develop. And when each smart specialization and strategy of the region, they have their plan of actions, it will show the potential that our key stakeholders are capable of. Not when we are saying from the top, like, we think that in this field you can do this. Yeah, it's a good opinion, but you need to understand that somebody has to be there, the one who will do that. Because it's one thing to do it, and the other thing is to start doing that, and to do that in sustainable manner, and not to stop, but understand where you're moving. So this specialization is giving answers to the options how to build the added value chains. In our opinion, what can we see as a result and what will be positive signal for us is when the number of applications to different programs of the EU, either Horizon, Life, or Connected Euro Facility or Single Market, whatever, they will include healthy, live, good offers that will be parts of the bigger puzzle, so to say, and some development of smart specialization in the region. If we are talking about as far as I understand, there will be a new call for the projects within the second pillar and Ukraine facility. It's also a tool where we would like to see, because as the colleagues from Eurocommission said, here's the tool, here it's open, please get involved. What are we coming with there? That is a challenge for regions. How can we explain what we want to do and what will be the added value for that? Or when somebody goes to a conference on reconstruction, recovery conference that will happen in Rome this year, what they will present there. A representative from the region comes and they say, we want to do this and that, and we are looking for such an investor. How sustainable this offer is and how strong it is, because you will have to talk with investors, you will have to talk to donors, and actually the issue and wording of smart specialization is the language that Brussels understands, the language that banks understand, the World Bank understands, EBRD, and many other financial institutions. This is a confirmation for them that the risk is much smaller than the proposition, because it had a big dialogue on the local level. They've identified serious players that are included in the process, and they understand what do they want to get out of that. There is support from the authorities, support from the government, because it is written in Smart Specialization. The strategy is just confirmed, and it's totally different discussion with such participants and implementation of certain project. Well, and also the last message that I would like to add is this principle is showing in practice two very important things that we will face in the future as well, and we need to implement that. That's the principle from bottom to top, and it's actually the practical use and presentation of the principle from bottom to top. From the bottom, we give the framework, we identify potential points, and then these environments start forming the, so to say, like the grain that has to grow into serious projects. And next is multi-level management, which is also one of the important things on our way to membership in the EU. When there are different participants, when different participants on the level of regions are engaging various stakeholders, they are forming their daily agenda, they are bearing responsibility for that, and they understand where do they want to go with that. Probably, yeah, here I will stop. I'm not sure that I showed all the regions. Just a second. Yeah, we have Cherkasy, by the way, one of the first regions that were engaged back in 2016. Chernivtsi region, Chernihiv region. Yeah, and actually the things that even Mr. Andriy, the colleague from the ministry, mentioned today, the methodology of smart specialization, we made the QR code so that those who will read that or watch that recorded, you can just read more about that and information about the coordination center. Again, something that was mentioned today. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rostislav. And actually, we are talking about the priorities of regions. That's very important. But we are also saying that this is a process that is happening all the time. Now I would like maybe to say a message for regions. The things that you saw on the screen, it is not mandatory that you have to have it developed, because you, regions, and on players on the level of the region, you have to understand what will work and what will not work really well. But you need to have the evidence. And the research center is working on that. Without the evidence base, if it's not evidence based, and a few people are coming like together or in coordination center, we decide that certain region has to have certain specialty, that won't work for sure. And it will not be adopted on the level of a joint research center. We need to all understand that. So there are these moments, and this is a long process, and the regions that now created the teams and smart specialization, also maybe the message to you, it's not mandatory that these participants of the regional team will stay with you forever. And the process of creation of smart specialization strategy and the process of monitoring and creation, the process is flexible. You are free to join the participants of your teams. You are free to go out of the regional working groups. It is not mandatory. No one forces you to do that. It's absolutely free process for all the stakeholders. If they feel that they are interested, if they understand that they can add some added value to working in smart specialization strategy in their region, then sure, you will always be very useful for your region in order to make your economic development more sustainable. I would like to give the floor again to our colleagues from DG Research and Innovation, Frederick Sinegor. Hopefully I pronounced your surname correctly. If not, then I will learn how to do that properly. Frederick, tell us, please, you also participated in the process of negotiations in Chapter 25. So maybe just a few insights and what we should expect of what we are going to talk about in this chapter, where we have smart specialization. Even though, to be honest, smart specialization is covering a lot of chapters. But today we will talk about Chapter 25. Thank you.
Very much, Nadia. You pronounced my name satisfactorily. It's a difficult name for anyone to pronounce, so I don't expect people to pronounce it in the Danish way. Nonetheless, indeed, Chapter 25 is a very interesting chapter, indeed, because Chapter 25, which is the chapter for science and research, it does not contain any requirements to transpose EU law into Ukrainian legal order. Instead, what we look at under Chapter 25 is the implementing capacity of Ukraine to effectively participate in our framework programs for research and innovation. That's a big mouthful. But what that essentially means is that we look is there are resources on the side of an administration to participate in the governance of Horizon Europe. We look at Ukraine's participation in Horizon Europe, our research and innovation program, and also Ukraine's ability to participate in relevant policy agendas like the European research area and Ukraine's integration into the European research area. And then, of course, all excellent science also contingent upon a functioning research and innovation ecosystem. So they're indirectly by looking at the participation in Horizon Europe, we're also interested in the overall research and innovation ecosystem. I would also like to say that Chapter 25 does not necessarily, it demonstrates that accession is not necessarily a binary thing. It's not that either you're in or out, because under Chapter 25, and by the virtue of Ukraine's association to Horizon Europe already, Ukraine mostly already benefits from all the Union has to offer in research and innovation directly. So Ukraine participates in our Horizon Europe program. Ukraine is participating in the governance of the program as well as an observer already. But Chapter 25 is important because it potentially have impacts on other chapters as well, because research and innovation and to an extent also smart specialization, which I will come to, helps economic development, and it helps Ukraine benefit from what there is in the Union as well, and to be able to compete inside the internal market, which is very relevant for accession as well. And of course, research innovation is really important for this, and so is smart specialization, because smart specialization is, of course, the bridge between research innovation and larger economic development. It's a way to attract public and private investments into specific actions relevant to your region, of course, and your strengths in the research innovation ecosystems there. And this is why we look at it also under Chapter 25, and we have a look at whether there are capacities to actually implement smart specialization strategies and how advanced you actually are in it. So, of course, it would be viewed very positively that we have this new working group on the side of Ukraine for smart specialization. Now, I cannot really go into the screening report that will be the outcome of the bilateral meeting we recently had on Chapter 25, but I would also like to say maybe some more obvious reform measures that Ukraine should pay attention to in any regard. And of course, there is limited funding right now for research and innovation in Ukraine, and this requires Ukraine to be able to rationalize its funding better, which is a process that is already ongoing in Ukraine. And Ukraine also needs to increase its expenditure for research and development overall, both from the public sector, but also private sources. I will also note that Ukraine, despite the war, participates at a higher rate in Horizon Europe than it has done in the previous framework programs, which is a great achievement for Ukraine. In the sphere of innovation, Ukraine has a lot of challenges. The most notable one is the lack of finance, which is difficult to address. But Ukraine can also take further steps to, for example, encourage greater science business cooperation or incentivize more investments in R&D by private companies as well. And then, of course, one of the more obvious things and challenges in Ukraine is also the destruction of research infrastructure. And research infrastructure is very relevant to smart specialization because it's some of your important capital in your regions, and destruction of which puts you at a disadvantage to perform excellent science and also for your entire research innovation ecosystem as well. So this is, of course, another priority perhaps Ukraine needs to focus on in more the long term. And here we have from DGRTD's side supporting Ukraine both in accessing research infrastructure abroad, but also we will also undertake a mapping exercise of the existing research infrastructure and propose an investment agenda for research infrastructure as well on our side. And of course, all of these challenges, as I mentioned, fit into the framework of smart specialization, right? So this is really a connection you can see here between rationalizing investments into key areas, enhancing your business and science business cooperation or business academia cooperation as well is also a key part of smart specialization. And of course, the research infrastructure is the capital that is important to you in your regions as well. So really, it's a great initiative that Ukraine has taken in establishing this working group, and I wish you the best of luck. And it will be a key driver not only for economic development but also for recovering Ukraine's research innovation ecosystem at large. Thank you very much.
Дякую, Фредерік. Ми дійсно
Thank you very much, Frederick, because we believe that the smart specialization will be good not only for science but also for business, for creation of new jobs, and at the end, returning potential employees to Ukraine, and also returning those who had to leave the country because of Russian aggression. Thank you very much, Frederick. I think that we will gradually finish our event, and I have a question to all our speakers, those who are both still present online and those who are here, as for the potential or possible, well, we need to show our regions now how important, from your point of view, is the process of smart specialization. What can it give Ukraine on the level of regions? And maybe we can give a brief message. What should we talk about in regions? Who's ready to start? Mr. Andriy? Yeah. From the side of the ministry, I can say that we would like to see. We understand that now, after the national level, we need to implement that on the regional level. And here, we understand what might be the problem for regions. First of all, they need to understand why do they need that in general at all. They need to clearly understand what they can gain from that. We have to give them the possibility. How do they do that? And also the resources in order to implement that. So we are ready to, together with our partners, to provide the expert support, to teach also the regional level so that they have the possibility to implement that and also to make the strategy of good quality, first of all. And then we are ready to also allocate resources for business support. For example, in the Ministry of Economy, we have the program of National Economic Policy Made in Ukraine. So we have there 14 programs for business support from micro businesses to big businesses. And accordingly, this financial resource includes 2 to 3 billion hryvnias for each region per year. And this is direct money that can be used with a focus on smart specialization. So we will consider how to integrate our programs here as well, and when the regions will have the corresponding strategies. Next, we will also work on involving financial resource from different international programs like Ukraine facility. They are specialized for the programs in terms of smart specialization, because what I like in the name, that specialization should be smart, right? So it has to be based on real data. It has to be based on real possibilities of the regions. And we don't have that much resource in order just to give it to all the regions and just to everyone. So only the priority spheres should get most support, because it's more about multiplying and growing Ukrainian economy and efficiency of support in general. I can see here that we need to support our regions with experts, and we don't have to forget about the administrative resources. So we will inform about our needs, the managers of regions. We will work with governors. We will work and we will explain, we will teach them why do they need this tool. And then probably separately, when doing the monitoring, we will assess how each region is using the tool and who is most developed, and we will scale that and we will show this experience to others, and that will be the real advantage for each region. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Andriy, and dear colleagues, and maybe some colleagues from online. Manuel, Frederic, Yanis.
I would like to indeed support, and it's been really a very useful discussion. I'll just maybe share one lesson learned, from the past process in Latvia. There are two things that work. One is carrot and one is stick. You need to put some kind of objective in front of you. Why would people go? Of course, everybody needs like an explanation and a clear instructions and understanding the process. But I think what helped us to finalize, because we entered into endless discussions, what should be our priorities, and everybody was a little bit dragging, its own priority and trying to get it through. But if you put a cutoff date and say that we need to agree on our priorities by certain time, and this will trigger access to the funding, be it government or European funding, that also helps to focus mind of everybody and also facilitates hugely the consensus. If we are hitting the deadline when the funds are going to be available. But I also want to caution against preparing one plan for the Commission and one plan for yourself. There should be only one plan. And in that sense, I think this process of smart specialization can provide you this platform of doing what you need to do. And even if we say you only need to come up with 3 priorities here for smart specialization, that's right. But it doesn't mean that you are discarding all other priorities, because you will get you will also have your conversation with other donors that are non-EU donors. There are also the funding of the regions themselves. There's a private sector, so you need to have a strategy, and this process can help you. So that's all I wanted to add, and I'm very, very pleased for this conversation today, and let's continue it.
Дякую, Яниса.
Thank you very much, Yanis. Yeah, colleagues, some final words. Manuel, they can see.
Yes, maybe if I could add, Nadia, when you asked the question, what should regions be thinking about? 4 words came to my mind. First of all, awareness. So as it was already mentioned, but it's absolutely key, they have to understand what they can gain from the process. Once they see the advantages, I think their drive, motivation, etc. will be different. So first of all, there's a word of awareness. The second word that came to mind is engagement. So they need to, fully engage in the process. And this needs to come with, let's say, the third word that I was thinking about is ownership. They need to own the process. They need to feel that they are in the driving seat, that they are, shaping their own future. Of course, with you, with the the central government, but they are also driving their own. They are the ones that are there close to the business, close to the research institutions. So if they have that engagement and they feel that ownership, their level of commitment and motivation will be also different. And finally, the fourth word that I came to my mind when you asked the question was governance, meaning that they have to form these groups, these S3 groups, to try to institutionalize the process in the sense that you create some permanent structure, some permanent network of people that will help to drive the process forward, and that will not be deviated by changes in, like in structures in regional governments or changes of people, etc., that are the ones that normally tend to derail the process. So if you institutionalize, you make it a bit more permanent, a bit more participatory, because there will be, these different people that are participating from different sides, and that will also help to make it, stable. At the end of the day, Smart Specialization is about the strategic vision. So it's not a short-term thing. We do this today and that's it. We don't think about it it's a short to medium to long-term effort. Therefore, you need to drive that direction, and then this permanent basis in terms of the governance is absolutely essential.
Дякую.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Yep, Rostislav. Thank you. No, actually, I am in really positive excitement from all the words. I think we should succeed. Thank you very much for the insight from the side of our colleagues from ex-Digineer. Still, I can't remember the new name. So it's a good story. And, we are all here on the same page. It works just like you say it should. So I think we need to consider how can we plan certain, I think maybe calls or something, so that this process of preparing the strategy won't last forever, but so that we can give a certain push to different tools when limiting these endless processes and consultations and debates, because usually they exist, and it's important part indeed. It's an important part, but it seems to me that the issue is for us not to lose the reason why we started working in Smart. It's important to have the discussion, but also important to have this movement forward and actually working on certain plan of actions. What I think that maybe the tools that we have in our regions, like regional agencies for development, that we were engaging to the process, and they are engaged to a certain extent with strategies of regional development. Well, I think that this is the tool that might be maybe the focal points, or let us say so, some environment that can be taught, so that further on they will be implementing that on the level of the region, because they know that best. And I am thinking where we should strengthen this institutional capacity on the regional level of those participants who can potentially unite people together and understand who's going where, and maybe give a push to someone, and having some horizontal contacts on the regional level. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rostislav. So from my side, I would like to add regarding the agencies. In agencies, we have few agencies that have projects related to development of strategies of Smart Specialization, and they just need expert support. And we, of course, are ready to provide that together with the Joint Research Center. And of course, in Ukraine nowadays, we have 6 digital innovation hubs that are working in the network of European Union, and it's a very important tool as well that can help us strengthen work on Smart Specialization. And some hubs, they are working for a few regions, so having such a project that can help few regions in development of this strategy. In addition, there is one element that somehow we did not mention today, but it's a very important element. We are talking about that in the National Team and Coordination Center on Implementation Smart Specialization, that is engaging relocated entrepreneurs to development of smart specialization strategy, and that is working in the regions. The regions, when forming their teams and forming their working groups on development of fields and development of smart specialization, they are free to add their players that they have in the regions. Those might be relocated enterprises, relocated universities, relocated scientists, those who can bring their added value to development of your strategy of smart specialization and, of course, strengthen your region. So for sure, we need to pay attention to those, and I can say that some representatives of the businesses from Donetsk and Luhansk that were relocated, so they almost went through the strategy of smart specialization development, and we were planning to launch the strategies in these two regions in May 2022. So their potential can be used. They exist in different regions of Ukraine, and we need to identify those, and those who are in the regions, you know that perfectly well. So here we will end. Thank you very much to all of you, Andriy, Rostislav, Yanis, Frederick, and Grigori, and everyone. Thank you very much. We are staying in touch, and we can say that it's a very positive event that happened for the first time in smart specialization from the beginning of the full-scale invasion. We truly hope that it's the first one from many others. We stay in touch, and I would like to say that we are also in touch and we stay in contact. The coordination center is working, and your offers you can send to us. I think that the contacts will remain the same, and we all know the context perfectly well from the very start. Thank you very much to Ukrainian Crisis Media Center for providing the platform for our event, and we stay in touch in social networks of Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, Ukrainian Institute for International Policy, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Education. Have a good day, everyone, and goodbye.